Hey everybody, today is Sunday, December 6, 2009, and you're listening to episode number 111 of On Tap. I'm your host, Dale Koulis, and joining me today is my brother, Joe. Welcome, man.
Hello.
And if you couldn't tell by that kick-ass background music, today we're doing a retrospective on Mortal Kombat. Or, wait. I think we got it wrong, Joe.
Mortal P-Fight!
Mortal Kombat!
P-Fight!
Yeah, so,
YouTube it.
yeah, we got a request on the forums from this from, one project, Nico Kusanagi, and, he referenced how we covered some of the movies before on prior episodes, so... And I was like thinking, you know what? Mortal Kombat? Hell yeah, let's do a retrospective on Mortal Kombat. I know there's a lot of love for Street Fighter on the VG Evo forums and fighting games in general, but a lot of the times you don't see Mortal Kombat discussed in that same league. So we're here to give it the credit it deserves and just discuss our awesome Mortal Kombat fandom. But before we get to that, a couple other things to go over here. First off, Joe, how you been doing, man? It's been a while since you've been on.
Oh, not too shabby. Just been eBaying it up and some of that fun stuff. How about you?
Not too bad. Hey, have you been playing a lot of those Genesis games you bought from MGC?
You know, I kinda have. I don't know. A little bit of this here and there, but playing a lot of NBA Jam.
Is that your favorite of the bunch, you think?
Oh, it's pretty sweet. I did get Toe Jam and Earl, though. I was like at a later date there, but Toe Jam and Earl is pretty sweet for the Genesis.
Toe Jam and Earl is always a classic.
I know.
The sequels, not so much.
Yeah, not the sequels, but the first one's awesome.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Alright, cool. And we'll be talking more about what else we've been playing later on in the show. I also got one review here coming up pretty soon before our MK retrospective. For Shadow Complex, the Xbox Live Arcade game. A little belated review. I just finally beat it a couple days ago and just got to get a quick review, my 2 cents in on it. So, but before we do that, oh my god, we actually got an email, Joey. Can you believe it? I can't remember the last time we got an email for the show. It's actually been a pretty long time. I think our 100th show.
Alright.
And this one comes from VG Evo user Reonuk. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Reonuk. So here's what he has to say. Hey guys, it's Reonuk. Just want to comment on last week's episode, the Modern Console Warfare episode, specifically about the resolutions. The 360 has a built-in upscaler that a lot of games use, meaning your TV will receive a 1080p signal, but the game is actually 720p. The resolution on the back of the 360 game cases show all available resolutions. PS3 leaves it at a native resolution, so a 720p signal will be its native resolution. The resolution shown on the back of the case is usually the native resolution, though a really small number of games upscale themselves. Like Metal Gear Solid 4, it's 720p but upscales to 1080p, and the game case only shows 720p. Only a small handful of PS3 and 360 games actually are native 1080p. Then he gives us a link for proof.
And notice Wii is not mentioned.
Yes. You can go down halfway and it will say the true resolutions of PS3 and 360 games. Keep up the awesome work. I like how my games look. I run, and I know another VG Evo user brought up, don't run 1080i, that's bad for your TV. I heard that. My TV does upscaling to 1080p, so I run that a lot for my games, and I heard all 720p is better, but I've ran the intro screens on both games before 720p and 1080p, and I know at least for Fallout 3, I noticed not a big jump, but enough of a difference that I kept it in 1080p. I don't know if you monkey around with resolution settings or not for your TV, Joe.
Not really. I did when I first got my HD TV, but after a little bit of messing around, I think I have it on 1080i. But
1080i?
Not sure, actually, but I remember just goofing around with it for a while, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think it really matters, so...
Yeah, so... I know Chris is really hard to convince when it comes to those resolutions, so,
I think one thing that does matter, though, is the size of your TV. That's probably one distributing factor to it.
Yeah, I've always heard and I believe that, the bigger the TV, the more those 1080 resolutions will mean. So,
Yep.
But for the most part, I don't really notice too much of a difference between 720 and 1080. So, anyways, that's a whole bunch of technical jargon that I hate trying to force my mind because it doesn't really matter that much to me. To tell you the truth, Joe, you know why I really upgraded to an HD TV for gaming?
Why is that?
Well, for gaming, actually, movies, I like watching Blu-rays, but I still buy and rent most of my movies on DVD. I'll pick up a Blu-ray here and there, but for gaming, I pretty much got it so I could read the damn text.
Yeah, and that is really annoying, especially with the newer games. I don't think you had this problem, but when the first Call of Duty came out, or the Modern Warfare 1, I remember when I had my 32-inch TV, and then because of Black Friday, I got the 37 HD TV, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I don't ever want standard again. So for me, the texting is definitely understandable, because I remember playing with the regular, I gotta squint at this type thing, but...
Just last week for Thanksgiving, when the family was up at our mom's, I brought the 360 over. I know seen it's usually a big hit. I know we brought it over to my sister's, just a few days before that, and she has an HD TV. It was a hit. We had a lot of fun. I brought it over to my mom's, but she only has a SD TV, and a lot of squinting was involved trying to read that damn text.
Yes, it was.
You wouldn't think that would be a problem. In some games, they are designed where they make the text so it works pretty good on, and it's pretty legible, so to speak, on a SD TV and HD TV, like Oblivion. But anyways, thanks for the email, Rayonick, and we strongly encourage anyone to send in emails. Always love hearing from everyone. Our email address is mailbag@ontappodcast.com. Here's my quick review of Shadow Complex. Like I said, I just beat this a couple days ago, just a little under 10 hours. It took me a while. Joe, did you ever get around to playing Shadow Complex, or at least a trial?
Nope.
No?
Watched the little video thing for it, but it looked okay, but I didn't really think much of it when I saw it. I thought it looked okay, though.
But yeah, pretty much Shadow Complex is like a 2.5D Metroidvania clone. And Joe, I don't know if you heard of the term Metroidvania, but it's like pretty much a combination of Metroid and Castlevania gameplay, where it's a 2D side-scroller, mostly action game, but a lot of puzzles are involved where you need power-ups. You need to go around finding power-ups to get past certain areas, and for a lot of those games, it involves, you may come to an area you may not be able to reach at one point, but later on you'll find like a different power-up, like say a hook shot or something, which will allow you to get across that area later. So a lot of puzzle solving, a lot of puzzle solving in that form is what you can expect out of this style of game. And it's the last game I really played like that, or pretty much the only game I played like that, was Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance last year when we did our failed attempt at a backlog segment on the show. But I kind of like it. It kind of made me want to go back to it now since I beat this. But yeah, Shadow Complex is that type of game, but in like a modern day setting, and there's not even that much of a narrative. It's very thin, and it's pretty much you and your girlfriend are going hiking, but you end up getting lost in this underground lair, which turns out to be this big shadow complex facility.
This sounds really gay.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
I'm sorry if I'm
You just ruined the game for me.
I'm sorry
though.
if I'm not giving it a good pitch.
Now, why would I want to pick up this game from hearing that?
Well, hey, hear me out.
Because I'm going to have to find a slingshot that some, very, other guy, had there before
it's
that
cool.
he failed.
The cool thing, too, is you don't have to worry about ammo. You get infinite ammo for your gun.
Ooh.
And your gun's very effective, too. But the thing here is, like I said, you gain all these special power-ups later on throughout the game. You gain this suit where you get more power-ups for it, which allows you to do a double jump, and allows you to hover, and other power-ups like this foam, which allows you to block like security scanners, so you can get access into doorways. Like I said, there's a hook shot, and grenade attack, more grenades, more foam. There's lots of power-ups throughout the game. You got this awesome map, which tells you if there's a power-up hidden in a room or not. So, and a lot of them are they're pretty easy to spot, but some of them may be in a spot you may not even notice. So that's kind of the cool thing. Like, for some reason, I just found it very addicting looking for power-ups in this game. And just, I don't know. Usually I don't like this type of challenge in a game, or I'm just not a big fan of your traditional puzzles in a game. Like, I don't know how you are, Joe. Like, say you're playing an action game, and all of a sudden you got this puzzle where you got to figure out how to get to point A to B. I don't know if you think that breaks up the gameplay, or like you got to find like a key or a certain series of switches or whatever.
No, I think it can be fun, but there's just some games that take it over the line and they add way, way, way too much thought to it. Like a game where you have to find a note that leads to another note, that leads to this note, that leads to that note, which leads to, like, it was under the original note's desk, and it's like, okay, that was lame. But, like, it's fun when they add that type of stuff in games, but some puzzle games are they're just doing it to add it to the game, so people will be like, oh, this is one of those games, and then it just turns out to kind of be a flop.
Yeah.
And that seems to happen more than good in those type of games, I would think.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, for some reason, there were at least several times in this game where, well, thank goodness I knew going into it that, you know, if you get stuck in an area, don't spend forever on it. It's pretty much you need a power-up to get past this area. So if I got stuck on an area for more than like 5 or 10 minutes, I'd just stop, I'd go and backtrack a little bit, and sure enough, just off the beaten path a little bit was another power-up for my suit or weapon that I needed to get across said gap. And for some reason, I don't know, I just really dug that style of game, and yeah, it wasn't something I was used to, and like, there are a few times where I bought the game right on launch, and I think like I put a lot of time into it the first week it was out. I want to say I got at least halfway through the game the first week or two. But then eventually, you know, sometimes I get hung up on a spot and I just put it down for a few weeks or a month or two, and then I'd come back to it, play and play through until I got stuck again, and then I'd end up picking it up again and just find myself hooked in again for another hour or two. But this last week I really put a lot more time into it for the last few hours, and a cool thing I like about this is the leaderboards for this game. I don't know if you look at online leaderboards a lot, Joey, for Xbox Live Arcade games or any for like your kill zone, I know, or SOCOM. I don't know if you like checking your kill stats or whatever.
Yeah, every once in a while it was kind of fun to do, but I don't know, you pretty much know how good you are, so after a while it doesn't really matter.
Mr. I am elite here.
Pretty much, it's like every game I'm averaging like 30-10. My kill streak is going to be like 3.0, you know, my kill-to-death ratio.
But like the leaderboards for this game are just really cool because, and very, I don't want to say innovative because a couple other games did this before, like the Orange Box, and I know Gears 2 did, another Epic game. Epic didn't develop this game, but they purchased a developer chair and assisted them where they needed it. And I think one of them was using some of the leaderboards that Gears 2 used, where you know, you're playing and you'll see on-the-fly leaderboards and achievement progress. Like, they got some of your typical achievements, like, I think it's like 100 headshots, or like 100 melee kills, or 50 melee kills, something like that. And that's really cool, seeing how close you are to getting that achievement. But once you get that achievement, you still, every few kills, those leaderboards still keep popping up. But instead of seeing how many more you need to get that achievement, you see how many kills in that area that the next closest person on your friend's leaderboard has. So, like, I get a few quick melee kills, and all of a sudden, there's a pop-up instant leaderboard, and I see I'm only like a few behind you or like another person on my friends list. And not to say that makes or breaks the game, it's a deal breaker, but it's a real cool feature, and it was a lot of people on my friends list own this game, and it seems like almost every few kills in each area of the game I played, I was always a few kills behind in some achievement behind a friend on my friend's leaderboard. So I just thought that was an awesome feature.
Yeah, it's not a bad feature. It's kind of neat. I know what you're talking about, but I do hate the achievements that are like, you got an achievement because you got 100 kills. I'm like, you're gonna get that relentless. Why would they put that as an achievement? The only achievements I get for that type of stuff is like completing like a level like in Left 4 Dead, like beating the first part of the campaign, like the first chapter or whatever they call it exactly. But like I get those because that's just kind of like, but some of that stuff is just achievements. Like when they first started, were kind of a little lame, and then they started to get good for games, and then they're going back towards that. We're just making achievements to make achievements. If in a game you're only going to have 10 achievements, or going to be, all in the 3-digit area somewhere around there, but at least as their achievements, instead of these games that make like 50 achievements, and that 100 kills is like a 10-point achievement, and it's just like, okay, I mean, like, it's just, I don't know, those kind of ruin it for me for achievements.
Yeah. Okay, but,
like, for example, Earth Defense Force 2012. You got an achievement for being on easy, an achievement for being on, like, the medium, and an achievement for being on the hard. It's like 3 achievements. And the game was ridiculously long, so if you got one achievement, you were freaking happy.
Some games could have definitely paced out their achievements better, but we digress. Back to Shadow Complex.
Yes.
I just absolutely enjoyed this game. There's a lot of value for this game. For a $15 Xbox Live Arcade game, being almost a 10-hour game. Of course, I've seen reports of people beating the game in like 3 to 5 hours once, you know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And doing speed runs through the game. But, and it kind of has like the look and feel and narrative of a high-quality disc-based game. I wouldn't say it's like if I were to say if this were to come out on a disc, I don't know if I'd buy it for $60, but I wouldn't say that $30 or $40 seems too far off. But this is definitely one of the most high caliber, top production value games I've seen on Xbox Live Arcade, and I think it's a great deal for $15. It's only real gripe I have with the game is it could have used maybe a little more story development, a little more exposition would have been appreciated.
The whole cave thing.
You get some cutscenes throughout, but not really cutscenes, just little quick cuts to him gaining his new power-ups or whatever, and you overhear some soldiers talking about how they're this big faction that runs this complex, the Restoration, are going to be invading San Francisco. And you get little teases of story, but supposedly they say this video game ties in with this new Orson Welles novel that came out. Though I've heard reports where that people who've actually read the novel and say it has very little to do with the game, so it is what it is. But other than that, this is an awesome game, and I think almost a surefire entry into my upcoming top 10 game of the year list for 2009. So, if you haven't bought this already or haven't even played it, just at least download a trial on it. It's worth checking out. Okay, Joe, are you ready? I said, are you ready?
For the peep fight?
That's right. It's time for the Mortal Kombat retrospective.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta ask you, Joe, I know Chris and Liz aren't on here today because they hate Mortal Kombat.
And they're lame.
And I got a feeling maybe a good chunk of VG Evo may hate Mortal Kombat too. There's a lot of love for Street Fighter and those style of fighting games, like your more technical, just pure combat-driven fighting games. But what's different from Mortal Kombat? I mean, what's your first memory of Mortal Kombat?
Well, my first memory of Mortal Kombat actually was kind of like I hated it because that and Street Fighter coming out at the same time type thing, and I don't know. There's, different characters, of course, for both games, but like they both like Street Fighter is more of a button mash and. It's fun, and there's moves also, but it was much easier to play than Mortal Kombat. And then Mortal Kombat was still a button masher, but it was a little more interesting. Like, if you tried button mashing, you usually just ended up doing the high punches, like, in a row, and, like, if the guy knew what he was doing, he'd, like, beat you up pretty bad. But in general, they're both button masher games. But after a while, I really started to like the fact that Mortal Kombat went towards that more strategic-type fighter game. And then that's where like the more of a first memory started to like actually kind of kick in.
Of course, that's back then, and they may seem like button mashers back in the day, but I don't consider either of those games button mashers. I mean, surely anyone can button mash and pick up and play it. Every now and then I find myself button mashing too.
And I totally owned you when I button mashed, and you said you know what you were doing.
I know, but
that proves my point.
I always thought like the Mortal Kombat games always specialized more for using your special moves more, your projectile attacks, your fancy, but you said a lot of people don't really think. At least I get the feeling and the vibe that a lot of people don't think that Mortal Kombat is that much of a serious fighter, and that there's not much to its actual core fighting mechanics.
With the earlier ones, I'll agree with that, but like pretty much. Like in 3 and 4 and whatnot, they started doing more of the special moves and whatnot.
My first memory of it is seeing it in the arcade, walking up and going like, wow, these are awesome graphics, man, for 1992 or 93.
87 is when it came out.
Yeah, 87. 1993 in the arcade, seeing like at the time digitized character models, like people actually capturing the raw image of a character. And compared to at the time, everything else was hand-drawn, And at that time, it's just like, wow, these are so real. And then, to top that off, here's a bucket full of gore and blood and these ridiculous fatalities. And seeing people pull those off in the arcade, and I was just like, I want to do that. Those moves are awesome. I don't know. I think that was obviously part of the draw to Mortal Kombat was the gore and like the digitized actors, so I think that was what drew me in. And I don't know, Joe, what did you always prefer, playing in the arcade or using a gamepad?
The arcade was way better.
I always thought the fatalities looked cool, but I can never pull them off. Like, it seemed with each new Mortal Kombat game, they gave you less and less time to pull off a finishing move.
Yep. Especially like in the arcade ones, how the hell did everyone, ever figure that stuff out?
Yeah. And, the game was awesome in arcades, but like for some reason I always just preferred using a gamepad more because, I don't know, that's just how I am. I guess I'm one of the few people who prefer playing fighting games with a gamepad over an arcade stick. But, I don't know if you remember this, Joey, but back in the day when this game hit Super Nintendo and Genesis, there was a big debate on which version was better. At the time, the Super Nintendo featured the superior graphics and a little more fluid controls, but the Genesis version had a code that let you enable blood in the game. On the Super Nintendo, you just saw sweat, like this little digitized sweat. There wasn't no blood, and some of the fatalities were toned down, and it resulted in the Genesis version outselling the Super version drastically more. Real thoughts of the first Mortal Kombat that come to mind?
Not necessarily. I think on Genesis it was better because I remember playing it on Genesis.
I mean, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, definitely.
I played a majority of the first Mortal Kombat though on the Game Boy because didn't have a Super Nintendo for a super long time, and had a Game Boy though, so like Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2, I got those for Christmas on Game Boy. I played those versions to death. Very, very inferior versions compared to their console counterparts.
The most I ever played on the first one though was on the Xbox when Deception Special Edition came out with Mortal Kombat 1 with it. It's on its own disc.
Oh yeah, huh?
I played a lot, and we had a little tournament thing. It's quite a bit of fun. Me and like 10 friends.
And it was like an arcade port, right?
Yep.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, those Game Boy Mortal Kombats just couldn't compare. Unfortunately, they featured I think they lost like a character or 2 or 3 characters compared to the console ones, and I remember you'd have to be very precise with your button inputs to do your special moves, or else you would just not be able to execute your special moves. You had to be very precise with them. But the only cool thing about the Game Boy version of Mortal Kombat, I remember this too, it was the only version that allowed you to play as Garo. And there was this, I remember too, there was this crazy long button input sequence where you like had to hold something during the credits screen the entire time, then enter your certain set of initials, and you'd play as Garo. And controlling Garo was just crazy as hell, but got it to work, and even though he was crazy to control, it was almost guaranteed wins all the time. But yeah, I played that version to death. Mortal Kombat 2, though, however, easily far better game, and I know some people still consider it to be the best Mortal Kombat to this day. What do you think made Mortal Kombat 2 that much better than the first one?
Just the fact, like you mentioned the whole graphics for MK1, and it was like, oh yeah, definitely, and then they took it up quite a bit of a notch from MK1 to MK2, and I think that just made it even more of like, whoa, they had this.
More blood, more gore, way more sweet-looking fatalities.
And just like even the characters look, and then the backgrounds look way better. And I think that just took it to like even the next step, especially back then. And
yeah, it's kind of amazing. I think they Midway rushed out the sequel within a year and a half, and there is just the leap in the graphics and just that year and a half time frame is just like it moved ahead almost a whole console generation. It's for that level of 2D graphics at the time.
Yep, they were very, very nice.
It was a huge leap,
You know what? Thinking about all these older versions, there's one reason why I could see why people like Street Fighter better than MK.
What's that?
They always switched up the goddamn special move buttons.
Oh,
Every single MK, basically, even on the newer versions.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that always pisses me off. Because, for like Street Fighter, for example, is
Ryu has always been quarter circle towards for the Hadouken.
And stuff like that, or for like the rolling kick or whatever in the air. I can't remember the name, but like all the special moves are basically the same, and they're all pretty much in the same type of sequence for the characters. Not like every character's the same, but their special moves are usually like some sort of button combination. Where in Mortal Kombat, and this goes more for the Xbox and on, it's like down, back, down, forward A, or up, down, left, right, B, and it's like, okay, this gets kind of ridiculous, and then when it switches, then the next one comes out, and then if you go back and play the other one, it's like, I don't remember how to do this crap.
Yeah, that's, as much as I think the fatalities look cool and all, for the last several Mortal Kombats, I don't think I've bothered to do one because the button sequences to pull them off are just incredibly long and hard, and it's like I'm not going to bother remembering like this 7-8 button input sequence that I only have like a second and a half to pull off.
Yep.
Like I said, it seems like it's getting shorter with every MK game. So
also, that's the thing with MK2 is that the whole becoming the more strategic fighter and whatnot. For that game, you need to be very precise with like when you get to your like 5 to 10 hit combos and whatnot. You have to be very precise, and you can't just hit, like, for example, if it would be down A, down A, down A, right A, left A, you couldn't, like, hit them, and then just, like, it would do it all out, like, throughout the once. Like, you have to do it while it's happening, because otherwise it wouldn't register with it. Like, you had to be time correct with the moves, and it was just kind of like if you were actually doing the stuff, but, you're controlling him as he goes, because otherwise it's like he just kind of like wigged his muscle or something. Like, it's hard to explain, but if you played it a lot, you know what I mean. Especially in Deadly Alliance, when you play that, and when you get to the longer moves, everyone always said, well, I can't do this. This is impossible. Because people were concentrating on hitting the button combination in the right order, where they weren't worrying about the timing. And that's one of the things that really stepped it up into that really,
MK2 put more of a focus on timing?
Nope, not the earlier ones so much, but on Deadly Alliance and on.
No, let's not jump ahead that far yet. We're still on MK2 here, man.
I mentioned that.
MK2. Holy.
I know.
Calm down, brother.
Not today.
But no, I think I saw some of those baby steps in MK2 that kind of led MK in that direction. But like I said, a lot of the earlier Mortal Kombats, for the core fighting, a lot of the core fighting was just like your basic mash a punch button for that quick triple punch animation, and then of course your your leg sweeps and the uppercuts. I think for some reason, and I'm glad all the MKs have kept kind of like a variation of that core animation for it throughout all the years as the MK series has evolved. For some reason, that leg sweep and that uppercut has just been something I've always associated with the MK fighting engine, and they've always stuck around in every game. But
and they did start that whole, like, you can uppercut them into something, or you can kick them off and into something, like, through a wall.
Yeah,
they started that early on.
Games.
Nope, they started that earlier on, too. It wasn't that common for the earlier ones, but I think it was, like, in the third one and on.
Yeah, it was in the third one. I got that in my notes. And in the second one, too, they introduced more fatalities and babalities, and they introduced babalities and friendships, turn your opponents into babies, or just do these crazy finishers, like where Johnny Cage, for a friendship, like in the movie, he'd autograph his little poster of himself and give it to his opponent. Just like MK going for even more crazy finishing moves to unleash on your opponents. But like pit fatalities, you said punching opponents into other areas. They didn't do that. That was only a finisher for just a couple stages at the time, but it wasn't really during gameplay. Like where you'd just uppercut your opponent into the spiked ceiling or into the abyss of the pit or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, MK just going in a different... I think MK2 was a bigger, better, and I think it had one of the best rosters of all the MKs, the new characters they introduced. I know you love Kung Lao.
Well, yeah, Armageddon, though, come on.
Jax is awesome. Yeah, Armageddon's good, too.
Yeah, Armageddon has everyone, basically.
That's like a kind of like a best of, though. But yeah, I think especially on the console too, both versions, Genesis and Super, had all the gore, all the blood. You didn't need a code right away. No one backed down. And gosh, yeah, I remember playing that on consoles to death. Like I said, I didn't have Super, but I remember going over to buddies at the time, playing a lot of it back in the day. But like with the first one, played a lot of MK2 on the Game Boy. I think you used my Game Boy too a lot.
Yep, out at the farm. Yeah.
Bored, what were we going to do? Play MK2 on Game Boy.
Basically.
Alright, let's move on to Mortal Kombat 3. And, I know Mortal Kombat 3, like you said, Joe, this is the first one where you can actually uppercut your opponents through stages and, like, multi-tiered stages for rounds of fights. So I remember seeing that for the first time thinking, hey, this looks really cool. You can, like, send your opponent through the ceiling and move on to another stage. That's something different. Like, at that time, too, like, another drastic leap in graphics. I don't want to say drastic. It was still 2D, and they still used digitized actors, but the technology, you could tell it was increasing at a pretty powerful rate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they rolled out 3 MKs and just, like, boom, boom, boom within, like, I think 2.5 to 3 years, and it looked far better. I mean, the gore's still there. I even think they added even more crazy finishers at that time. What was it there? They added, Animalities, where Liu Kang would turn into a dragon.
Yep.
And I don't know if you remember this about Mortal Kombat 3, Joe, and I don't know if we want to talk about Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 too in this also, but like they added the run button. What did you think of the run button? Did it do much for you?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty neat, but yeah, it didn't really matter. It added a different type of gameplay, but
yeah. But like, I think the people that use it are like those kind of like, dare I say, pro MK players. Every now and then I'll throw Ultimate MK3 in on Xbox Live Arcade. Just like, I wonder if people are playing online. And now, granted, there aren't hundreds and thousands of people playing online, like probably like the most current 360 fighters or PS3 fighters. But usually you can find a handful of people playing online in Ultimate MK3 at any given time. And those are the diehards, man. Let me tell you, they kick my ass so bad. And they use that run button and they link it with all these other combos and uppercuts. They can juggle me in the air forever, and within like 3 seconds, I'm not kidding, like knock off 2/3 to 3/4 of my life just like that.
Yep.
And they use that run button a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, it can definitely be a good thing, but I don't know, from what I remember is like, if with your long kick, it was really easy to hit them while they were in run, and then they would stall for like that half second or so, and then you just run at them and grab them, and it good against people that didn't know how to counter it, but if you knew how to counter it, the whole run was pointless.
And MK3 Ultimate MK3-2, those were the ones I remember specifically too, where they added the on-screen displays that said if you got like a 3-hit combo or
Yep.
5-hit combo, a certain percentage off, you know. And I think that's, even though like you said, the core combat really got more fleshed out and defined in Deadly Alliance. I think a little bit with MK2 and MK3, you saw the roots of it. I don't know. Another weird thing about MK3 was, and maybe this is like where the series I think started to see a little bit of a decline, was with its roster. I think the first MK1 and 2 had really cool, even though a lot of cliched rosters. You know, you had your palette swap ninjas, you know, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but you know, they're very likable characters. And you got your special forces officers, Jax and Sonya, and you know, Liu Kang, the stereotypical Bruce Lee wannabe, and
Bruce Lee's a typical Kung.
but I don't know.
Cool.
Those rosters were awesome. And then MK3, we have Stryker, the vigilante with the gun, and Cabal, the guy that looked like he was the influence for the weird masks or the core inspiration for the masks you see in today's Fallout 3 and the early Fallout games. and Nightwolf, the Native American.
Yeah, that was really weird. I'm like, wait, that's kind of racist.
Yeah, Midway, and like, and even though I thought they were weird as hell and stupid at the time, though, today they've grown on me a bit. You know, we had palette swap ninjas, but now we have palette swap cyborgs with Sector and Cyrax.
Yep. And there's other ones too in Armageddon.
Yep.
From what I remember.
So, yeah, I don't know. The roster really looked weird, and then you had Ultimate MK3, which I just think added more characters from previous MK games and some new ones, and just kind of like your deluxe edition of MK3. But overall, though, I don't know. I think MK3 was a step down in the series. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
I don't know. Like I said, I wouldn't really say it was a good for it, but it wasn't really a decline either. I would say it was just like an extension.
Just didn't really get that much better, but didn't really get that much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. There were kind of some more handheld and other releases at that time that using that engine, like the N64 had Mortal Kombat Trilogy, which was kind of like Mortal Kombat Armageddon at that time, putting in as much MK characters as possible, kind of like a best of edition, and then you had more handheld versions of even MK3, which I heard was horrible. Thank God I was not playing it at that point. But Mortal Kombat 4, last arcade released Mortal Kombat game, first Mortal Kombat game to feature polygonal graphics. The series is kind of dormant for a couple of years at this point. They took a couple years off, got a whole new graphics engine, moved away from the digitized actors that defined the series. Polygonal graphics, somewhat 3D gameplay. It was mostly still took place on a 2D plane, but you could still sidestep from time to time. And I don't know. I remember playing this a fair amount on the N64 way back when, but I just don't really have that much of a clear memory of it. I don't remember it being... I don't know, I think at that point it felt like the Mortal Kombat series lost a step. I don't know. What are your thoughts of Mortal Kombat 4, Joe?
Well, they kind of lost a step because they like veered off there more or less, but that's just because they were trying something new. I mean, and at that point too, I think they figured they had to try something new, like they kept on doing with the whole graphics, you know, and craziness of it, or they were going to lose their, you know, fans. And I think they went for it, but they didn't. I think they did an okay job, but I can't remember the fourth one the best either.
Well, I think at that point, too, I think they were a couple years late moving into 3D, because at that point, if Mortal Kombat 3 was out in 1995, and then Mortal Kombat 4 came out in 1998, so in that 3-year time span, other 3D fighters came to the scene and took dominance over the fighting market. You had Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 out at that point, Tekken 1 and 2 out at that point, and that kind of, I think, drove the fighting game audience away from your traditional 2D projectile-based fighters, even though I guess Street Fighter 3 hit the scene and that kind of retained its Street Fighter audience. But, like, MK didn't put anything out, and I think when MK4 came out, like, 3 or 4 years later, you know, people were like, wait, this isn't Mortal Kombat. This is kind of 3D, kind of not. And it's just more of the same, and we're used to Virtua Fighter and Tekken, where it's that type of 3D combat where it's just all fighting, all core fighting driven and combos, I think people were ready to move on from projectile and special move and fatalities at that point. I don't know about you.
Yeah, probably. I think so. That's probably why they also went to their other versions of, like, spin-off games.
Yeah.
Hey, on tap. I'm real happy for you, and I'm going to let you finish. But 360 Nation is the best podcast of all time. The best podcast of all time. Be sure to listen to 360 Nation at 360nationpodcast.com or on the VGEvo.com network. Okay, maybe I won't let you finish.
The Mortal Kombat universe tried going into spin-offs at this point. Who here remembers Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero for the N64?
Lame.
Joe, I have not had a chance to play this piece of garbage from what I'm told, but I talked to you, and then your buddy Jake, and my buddy Matt, who's been on the show a couple times before, and I've heard all horrible things about this game. Fill us in.
Pretty lame, that's all you need to know. I only played it for like maybe half an hour, and I was like, why am I still playing this?
Well, it's pretty much like a 2D side-scrolling action game with some RPG elements. Like, from what I understand, you like level up and learn more freeze attacks and stuff like that. But
No.
I was talking to Matt earlier today, and he just said it was very bland and extremely generic and extremely boring.
Yeah.
And I was watching footage of it on YouTube and all, and the game just looks. I think. Was it the PS1 version, or was it just N64?
PS1.
No, it was on N64 also,
N64.
but they got cutscenes of this on YouTube, and oh man, yeah, you could tell they were, your say Columbia TriStar, your Fox Movie Studios, they definitely didn't share their production values with what the MK team was able to cook up in their little back office.
Oh
yeah, definitely not a good mark for spin-offs for Mortal Kombat. And it led a trend there for a little while. Now, I know I think I played a little bit with you in this next one, because if I remember it has 2-player co-op. Mortal Kombat Special Forces on PS1.
Yeah, I don't remember playing co-op, but I remember playing it. And
I mean, you're just Sonya and Jax, right?
I think it was just Jax.
Jax?
And, it was an okay game. It wasn't, like, amazing, but it was okay, and I remember playing it for about an hour or so. And I bought my copy at Blockbuster, and it was one of those, used pre-owned ones. And it actually stopped working after, like, an hour, so from, like, the first hour, it seemed okay. It wasn't, like, great.
Maybe played it with someone else. Well, it was just like your 3D action brawler at the time, kind of like your Die Hard Arcade or Dynamite Cop. Like a 3D action brawler with MK characters. And, like Fighting Force and stuff like that. And I don't think it was as horribly received as Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. But, it wasn't really that great either. I just think it was a mediocre game, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and one other thing I want to mention about Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, which I was talking to you earlier today, Joey, about. Another reason why I never played that is because I made sure to stay away. Is because
you love Sub-Zero.
That in Nintendo Power back in the day, Nintendo Power, big, of course, published by Nintendo, they seemed to give glowing reviews for all games. Like, it seemed back in the day, Nintendo Power, their review scale went from 6 to 10, and they rarely gave anything under that. But they gave Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, if I remember right, a 3.2. That low of a score. And I was so hyped and jazzed up to play, just what seems like a cool addition to the MK universe, but yeah, 3.2, yeah, I'm staying away. If Nintendo Power is giving you a 3.2, yeah, screw that game.
Oh, yeah.
But off to the third and final spin-off so far of the MK universe. This one is actually from the little bit I played of it. I think I remember playing like an hour or two of this with you a while ago. A far better spin-off is Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, where you're Kung Lao and Liu Kang in like another 3D action game. And yeah, it's just...
it's pretty sweet. It's more or less, it has the fighting style of best probably example is Super Smash Brothers, and it's more or less, but you have like you're going.
I don't remember it being like Super Smash Brothers.
Let me get to it. But like, okay, with that statement, I'm gonna go say that the multiplayer versus was basically Super Smash Brothers in the whole 3D environment instead of like 2D 3D. It was 3D all around.
You mean Power Stone then?
Yep. No.
Power Stone was like a 3D Smash Brothers.
But I was gonna say is it's basically Super Smash Brothers, but you actually have like an environment to go through because you could pick up weapons and you could do all those like weird stuff. You know, I mean, your characters have their own abilities. To me, the gameplay kind of reminded me a lot of that, especially at the verses. But like in general, yeah, it was actually like good story and introduced a lot of the characters and part of the story, like how they were kind of meant to be introduced. Not so much.
It's like an origin story kind of for
a lot of characters. It involves a lot of the characters. And not so much of like from what I know, historically correct Mortal Kombat stuff, but basically it would catch more of the villains than more of the good people within the story, and of course you'd have to like kill them off, but it'd be like somewhere along that story is like, you know, you'd meet, you know, Reptile while actually
I remember one part specifically, you know, Johnny Cage is one of my favorite MK characters. I remember one part, him coming in helping you out for like a little segment of a level. There would be assist characters, and they'd come and help fight by your side for certain parts of the game.
Yep.
And probably conversely, there's a lot of characters that, you know, the villains of the MK universe that you fought against too throughout.
Yep. But I mean, like in their whole environments, though, like that's where you'd usually run into them at, not just like randomly. You know how in the previous games, that's how they kind of were doing it a little bit. But in general, like the gameplay was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to play with your friends. I mean, it's just pick up and play, and it was, you know, quite entertaining to play too.
And most importantly, unlockable Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh yeah, which I never did because I couldn't beat Baraka.
You couldn't beat Baraka.
No, I like single player because I played it I played like all the way up until Baraka by single player, and then me and Jake played it for like 3-4 hours, and then I played it with you for a while too. And, like, that Baraka's impossible to freaking beat by yourself. Because I don't really go and look up online how to beat people anymore or any of that, because I think that kind of ruins games. But Baraka's a douchebag in that game. And, like, so gay. That's all I have to say about that.
Now, one thing you mentioned here, too, that we didn't really talk about yet in Shaolin Monks was, like, talking about how, kind of like origin stories and learning more about the background of the characters. And, I don't know, Mortal Kombat was really the only fighting game, it seemed like, or fighting series where I actually cared about the story. I just remember in the arcade days, mostly I started really developing, like, it's just this bond, or whatever, for lack of a better term, for the MK universe and its lore, because I remember going and watching arcades when I had no little kid, no out of quarters to play, and just staring at the game while it was in demo mode. And after enough time, you'd see like this, like the menu screens for like introducing the game's story and like how you're in Outworld fighting for Mortal Kombat and just kind of giving you the background for each character. And it really hooked me. And I think what really hooked me even more about the story and its universe was I was a huge fan of the Mortal Kombat comics from Malibu. I own almost every single one. They only made the comics for a few years, but because then evil Marvel, they had to freaking buy out Malibu and kill them off. But I love the MK comics. They for some reason There's 2 main miniseries, and they ran them for about like a year and a half to 2 years, and a bunch of other little spin-offs too. But yeah, just man, I don't know. Were you a big fan of the Mortal Kombat story or its universe, its lore?
I like the story. This is definitely better than Street Fighter. Street Fighter was just like each character was kind of fighting for the government of their own government kind of thing more than anything, and then some of the people were fighting for their own personal reasons. But basically, everybody was just fighting for some sort of like world power, where this one was, well, I guess you could say in a way Mortal Kombat was kind of doing the same thing to a degree, but there was like everybody in the world, it was like fighting to
save Earth from Outworld.
Yes, basically. Where like they were just like, ooh, we're gonna stop Bison because he's a bad guy, but we don't even know why anymore, because this, like, at least in the movie, they're like, Bison's bad. We should probably stop him because he's wearing red, and that's a bad color for people to wear. Notice no one else is wearing red.
Raul Julia is awesome. He did a great portrayal of Bison and gave you a reason to hate him.
Oh yeah, didn't that guy die too?
That was his last movie.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it was good. Even though it was like a corny movie, it was still good.
While we're on the top of the movies, this is probably a good spot to bring up the 2 Mortal Kombat movies that came out in 95 and 97, and Scott and I kind of brought this up in an earlier episode this year of On Tap. We rewatched the first Mortal Kombat movie, and it still holds up. It's still like my favorite video game movie of all time.
Oh,
Not that it's saying much, but like I said, that captured the MK universe. It felt like an awesome representation of the game. All about awesome fight scenes.
Yep.
A lot of great character development, and not really character development, but gave
introductions of them.
Gave you a reason to care for each character, and
Yep.
it was just fun to watch. Some of the special effects don't hold up that much because, come on, movies, CG and special effects has gotten so much better over the years. But
Yep.
that movie is still pretty fun to watch.
Oh yeah, and I really don't remember the second one so well, except
For
the
good
very
reason.
end of it. Well, that's the thing. I remember it not being the greatest, but I remember like at the end of the second one, like near the end, it started to get better because we saw it on my birthday, or for my birthday, and I remember being like, "Oh, this movie wasn't that good, but it's starting to get awesome." And then it ended, and I'm like, "Well, okay, where's the third one?" And then they never made it.
Well, for the second one, the only same actors they can bring back were Robin Shaw was Liu Kang, and whoever played Katana. They had to bring in a new Raiden, and a new Jax, and a new Johnny Cage, and new Sub-Zero, new Scorpion. I mean...
And that's what probably ruined it too, but...
Well, no, main thing that ruined it didn't really give you a reason to care mostly about the characters. It was more about, let's cram in as many of the new characters we introduced in MK2 and 3 as possible, and let's spend the whole movie killing them all off.
Yeah, that was pretty funny though. I mean, that's why I remember the Cyrax battle. That's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, they did do that. But yeah, the whole they couldn't get the original, cast from the movie. That's just what kind of ruined it for me. Well, many of them. That's what kind of ruined it for me. Because you felt that whole kind of connection, and even though the graphics were pretty decent, you just put them to the faces of them, and then you got all these different people, and it's like, lame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the good thing that came out of the pair of MK movies, and if you couldn't tell by the opening, is that kick-ass soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on, the characters screaming, Mortal Kombat! And just that awesome trance dance music. It was perfect. For some reason, I was watching on YouTube watching the Mortal Kombat music videos from the movie, and I even own the soundtrack for the first movie. And I bought that, I didn't buy that right when it came out. I still found it at Best Buy, if I recall correctly, 6 or 7 years after the first movie was out. That's how popular it was. That first movie just had an awesome score. And, gosh, yeah, I mean, that movie the first one was awesome.
They should make another one.
I remember hearing plans for another MK movie being in the works a couple years ago, but I haven't heard anything since. So.
And the name Mortal Kombat is just so much better than Street Fighter. Street Fighter. People that fight on the street. Are they bums? I don't know. Mortal Kombat. Alright, these guys are mortal. They're going to be combating. They're going to die because they're mortal.
Well, there is a version of Street Fighter called, a port of the first version become a console called Fighting Street.
That's even good. No, but no, Street Fighter is a good game. It's a good series, but they've never really done any of the extras that Mortal Kombat has done. Especially, oh my god, what was that one that you liked for the PS2 for Street Fighter or something? It was.
I really like Street Fighter EX3.
Oh yeah, that was gay. I hated that game so much.
Well, we played that one today.
I know.
I love that game.
Right when it came out, it was okay. And then, like, the more I played it, the more I hated it. Because I'm like, where's my Mortal Kombat?
Joe, come on, I still like Street
No.
I know we're defending Mortal Kombat a lot, but...
No, I'm saying that one
you
ruined
may not
it
like
for
Street
me.
Fighter, I still really like Street Fighter.
No, I do like Street Fighter.
I think I
not
prefer
that one.
more of the MK games over Street Fighter, but I'm not going to knock Street Fighter, especially like Street Fighter
one.
2 Turbo, a lot of early
No,
Street Fighter
that's
games.
great. Especially, like, the HD remix that they did of it. That was great. But just that EX3 was really gay. That's all I'm saying. And they screwed over Vega, because he sucks in that one. And he's the only who's badass in other ones. Even though, like, not badass, he's
Skullomania.
badass.
Skullomania.
Yep.
Okay, enough about that, but, alright, now that we're away from the movies, like, yeah, you know, it seemed like the Mortal Kombat franchise really hit a wall there for a few years after 4 came out, you know, and wasn't really, like we said, wasn't really received that well. Didn't really make the correct jump into 3D that the series seemed like it needed. And for a few years there, the MK series, you didn't even hear from it from like 99 to 02 there for 3 or 4 years. Nothing really happened, but then the MK series made a return, and just an astounding return, because it came back for Xbox, PS2, and GameCube with Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and it just seemed like a whole new rebirth for the series.
Yep.
And what was it you think? You kind of alluded to it earlier, Joe, but you said it was like they really fleshed out the fighting styles. Each character had 3 fighting styles.
Yep. They had 2 primaries and then a weapon.
Yeah, so it was like, heck, we'll make this like, we'll add this whole Soul Calibur dynamic where you can fight with weapons now.
Yep. And that was the best part. I mean, like, you know, in general, is whatever the guy had a weapon mounted on them, like, for example, Scorpion Sword, you know, you gotta use that. Or if, didn't necessarily all the weapons weren't mounted on them, but a lot of the guys, whatever they kind of had on their side or their back or whatever is
and
what
then
they
you could
had.
impale each other with them at the time, the first one.
I think that was added in Deception.
Well, was it in Deception?
I
I remember
so.
doing it in Deadly Alliance. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think they added... Okay, it was either in Okay, no, I think you're right. I think it was in Deadly Alliance, but then they took it out of Deception. Because in Deception, they had the same system set up for 2 and 1.
I think you could impale, but it didn't take away damage.
No, it constantly
constantly
took away damage, but then you didn't have your weapon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that they did that in Deadly Alliance, and then they took it out of Deception, because a lot of people got pissed off about the impale.
Yeah. People took advantage of it.
Oh, dude, it was awesome. You impale somebody and you just block like a motherfucker.
I remember we played a shitload of Deadly Alliance. I mean... For some reason, like you said, the character roster for that one was really good. They introduced a lot of awesome new characters, and Borucho, and then you had the blindfolded dude, and was it Husaseo or whatever his name is?
It was weird.
And I don't know, something about like you knew the guys at Midway were serious because they started the game off with the opening cutscene with Liu Kang getting killed off. You know, the mascot MK character, Liu Kang, well, debate between him and Scorpion, but, being like the mascot MK characters, but, Liu Kang getting killed off right at the get-go, not in the game. And you knew they were serious, and,
Yep.
Gosh, that made the transition from MK into 3D complete, I thought, because true 3D fighting, you had all these awesome, fighting styles, and it was a different type of 3D fighting compared to Virtua Fighter and Tekken, I think. And I know a lot of people in VG Evo say it's not their cup of tea, but I liked it a lot. I think it was a lot more about pulling off these crazy combo strings and juggling your opponent for these combo strings, and it was just a lot of fun.
Well, One of the better things, too, in Deadly Alliance, like, in the earlier ones, you're always wondering about, okay, because of course they changed up the whole fighting system more or less, too, to do that more, strategic way.
Mm-hmm.
But they also did the best thing about adding Conquest to it, but in the Conquest for Deadly Alliance...
Conquest was, for those that don't know, is like the main single-player mode.
Yep.
But in the Deadly Alliance, it was kind of like more of a training mode.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say, is that I think they had 10 stages, and it was like the first couple were very simple combos to do, and then, the next couple after that were starting to be harder, and then the last, three stages, 8 and 9 were like their advanced combos, like
kept
those
on really, really challenging.
10-hit combos or so, and I think the last one was their fatality, if I'm right. But I'm not exactly sure if that was right for all of them. But in general, it's like, alright, we got new modes, or like new way of fighting, and this is an introduction. And then in the later ones, they added different conquest modes, but I thought that they should have kept that in all the next ones, like 2 versions of Conquest, or Conquest and then some type of story mode name, because they did just such a good job at the whole, this is an intro to it. And also, even if you looked at the moves list, it did not include all the combos that you learned in Conquest mode. And that was the best thing about it.
It's kind of like a special reward to the people that took the time with it.
Yep, because some of them were hard, like as we were talking earlier, you had to get the timing down right. Those moves that weren't on the move list were on there also that were much harder to do. But, when you saw the whole connectors and, like, the 7-hit thing, it was like 7 hits, 40% damage. It was like, yeah,
But those took a lot of skill to pull off.
At first they did, but after a while, after you notice the whole, you have to do it with the timing of them, not just, put it in as fast as you could. Mm-hmm. It got pretty okay.
Yeah. And I think one last cool thing about Deadly Alliance was it introduced the Crypt, which was that huge mammoth unlock system where there's literally hundreds and hundreds of collectibles. You just picked a coffin to unlock by getting coins by winning more fights throughout the game. And some of those coffins were even just pure crap. Here's another character sketch, another concept art. There are even some coffins that had nothing. They were dummies.
Yep. Actually, that is one thing I looked online for, because I wanted to unlock certain characters and costumes.
Yeah, that's where you get all the characters and costumes. Every now and then you get a pretty cool video or something. And I remember Cooking with Scorpion video.
Oh yeah, that stuff was priceless.
And so just overall, just like a kick-ass rebirth for the series. And then the next Mortal Kombat released 2 years later was Mortal Kombat Deception, and that's a cool thing. I like a Midway did too. They didn't go pure sequel crazy like they did the first set of Mortal Kombat games, year after year, MK after MK. Since Deadly Alliance, they've waited 2 years between each and every core MK game, since then. So Deception, same fighting engine, just kind of more of the same, but more characters, and I don't know. And then they added the 2 mini-games, Puzzle Combat and Combat Chess, where just giving traditional mini-games a little combat twist where you could do fights for chess pieces.
Well, it was basically, the easiest way to explain it was, imagine the whole handicap system, and you were able, for example, if you were really freaking good with the Scorpion, it played like chess, but if you took out their king, you won, so you have to make your way to the king by fighting. But if you were really good with Scorpion, you would want it as your pawn, because the pawn had a very low life handicap. And, that's the guy you're going to be able to use best. And the guys that you were still good with, but not as good with, that would be, maybe your knights, or depending on how you'd want. But basically, you would figure out a system of who you're best with to who you're not best with, kind of like the most important chess pieces in order, and then your most important people in order.
All your pawns... So pretty much all your pawns are all the crappy ninjas, your Ermac, your Reigns, the Smokes.
No.
I know, I'm just kidding.
The pawns was all of one unit, and then the knights were both one unit. The bishops were one unit. I mean, they weren't one unit, but they were one guy for both bishops and whatnot.
So was Combat Chess actually pretty cool?
Yeah, it was actually, it added a very, very neat aspect to the game, and it was neat and interesting to play.
And Puzzle Combat was actually Mortal Kombat's version of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. I don't know if you remember that, Joe.
I
but
played that.
This is like a Street Fighter puzzle game, and this is your Mortal Kombat puzzle game. So.
And it was weird. I don't really remember playing it, though.
And Deception added Xbox Live Online play.
Which was extraordinarily laggy, but awesome.
Pretty laggy. But that was
later on, though, like a couple months later, I popped on it more, and it wasn't that bad because you didn't have as many people playing, but I think they had their own, server thing.
Well, at the time, like, that was a new thing for fighting games. Deception was one of the first fighting games ever to add online play.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say it was the first, though it might have been, now that I'm thinking about it, but not a lot of fighting games had online play last generation because, lag, and so like you said, lag could be like a huge detriment if just the slightest second of lag made its way into online play.
Oh, yeah.
Could really throw off your combos, your timing, your button sequences.
Yep.
So, but online play was a huge deal. Added the combat chess puzzle combat mechanics. Made the conquest mode made a little bit more story driven.
Well, yeah, I'll go into Armageddon's more later, but Armageddon's was better. But in Deception,
evolved it a little bit.
It evolved it some, but they stuck to the concept of, like, you're going to learn guys' types moves. Like, it's like, these so many fights in a row are going to be with this guy, these so many fights in a row are going to be with that guy. But they made you actually go from place to place, so there was a story, and you had to kind of do things in the story. And basically it was a story, but kind of the first Conquest mixed with it, except not as evolved as it was.
It was still mostly a training mode, but this time it gave you like a little bit of a story mode, just to put the whole thing together.
Yep, and a little bit. Yeah, that'd be a better way to explain it.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't pick up that one. I remember just playing with you a little bit, but was there any major changes to like the combat in that one? Didn't it introduce like more air juggles and like the combo breakers?
The air juggles, and then it added the breaker also,
where you could just interrupt a combo instead of just blocking like a combo string. If you'd hit block at like a certain key point, it would more or less reverse it, kind of.
Well, basically, yeah, that's what it would do. It'd break their combo, but basically, you would just be holding the block, and then I think you'd have 3 breakers, and you'd be holding block, and then you could just keep on hitting towards them on the D-pad, or not the D-pad, but the left stick, I believe. And like basically, if you just kept on hitting it when they would attack you, it would break it up. Mm-hmm. But like this would also work if you were in a combo, or if you kept on blocking while they're trying to come at you, if they're just being relentless. Yeah. Now, like, if you were pushed up against a death trap and you didn't want to go in, and they just kept on attacking that and kept on coming at you, you do a breaker, and then maybe do a switch around grapple type thing.
Death trap was another new thing. Deadly Alliance and Deception, they kept up the tradition of that Mortal Kombat 3 introduced, where you could move from multi-tiered stages during the fight, and eventually bust through a wall or whatever and go to a different part of a stage. But now, like you said, they got death traps where you can get flown into like the background of like a flaming pit in the background, or like just these other, like you said, death traps that can just instantly end a match. How did you think that affected like the core gameplay? Like it? Not so much?
I thought it made it interesting. I didn't think because it wasn't easy to get somebody into them, and it wasn't necessarily hard, but you had to do something that would put them in the air, or that would kick them really far back, and then they also had to be like right next, like literally, basically on the line or behind because they had these little line markers for it. They had to be basically on or behind it, and then you had to do those type of kicks. So it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. And then you also added the great risk of what if that character has the grapple where it switches sides. Mm-hmm. And then you had the easy chance of getting kicked into there. So it was a little cheap, but not necessarily. Mm-hmm. I mean, it added some fun gameplay. And then also, I think in the Deception, they also added the whole weapons. Mm-hmm. Like the weapons and like just randomly throughout the...
Deadly Alliance? Oh, you mean just to pick up?
No, like not your weapons of like your class, but like the weapons to pick up.
Not your weapon fighting style, but like, like a power, like a Smash Brothers style weapon. I can pick up a weapon and start using it.
And they did do a lot of damage though. Mm-hmm. It's pretty crazy.
Cool. Okay, and let's hear the last of like the trilogy, so to speak, of Mortal Kombat games to come out on Xbox, PS2. Mortal Kombat Armageddon released another 2 years later in 2006. Kind of like a best of kind of thing. Put every single, with like the exception of maybe one or two, if I remember correctly, every single fighter in every previous Mortal Kombat, all together, there's like, what, over 60 fighters, something like that.
And the game did an amazing job at that, too. And they could have made it so you could have unlocked more, but you have everyone but 4 people unlocked. And there's the 2 brothers from the storyline, Shao Kahn and then Blaze. And they could have made it so you unlocked more, and that would have been fun. I would have definitely been game for that, and it would have added more replay value to it. But that's where they took the really, really big leap into Conquest, where it's actually a really long...
It's pretty much like a single-player action game.
And it's like a decent spin-off. And, it's just a lot of fun. It's very fun and very entertaining.
I was just playing... We played a lot of these MK games yesterday just to kind of get a refresher on some of the core mechanics of them. And I threw it in Conquest mode for just like a quick 15, 20 minutes, picked up where I left off. And I want to say, like, all the controls were like super fluid as like at that time, like the modern third-person action game, like a Dead to Rights or God of War or whatever. But it was still like a fairly solid 3D action game at the time. I mean, I want to say it was pretty much like you do like your basic combos, enemies, and then you get orbs, which you could use to cast like an instant fatality on person.
Also with that, 'cause you didn't play it as much, but basically when you gained moves throughout the storyline, you gained moves for him, like to use also in the Conquest mode. Like moves that like you could use when you went to like remember when you had to face Sonya Blade?
Yeah.
And it was like the actual fighting.
Mm-hmm.
When you gain moves throughout that type stuff throughout Conquest, you're able to do those in the third-person game too.
Okay. Cool.
So like it added a lot more to that also. That was like later on, you kept on gaining stuff, or like the special moves, like the holding your magic button and then hitting X, A, Y, B and stuff.
And I guess we didn't really say it, but you control this brand new character for the Conquest mode, which you later, if I remember right, you unlock him in like the main game.
Yep, him and his brother Shao Kahn and Blaze. And also with the characters, and we forgot to mention this in Deception, but in Deception they entered the create your character. And in Deception it wasn't bad. It was, it was pretty mediocre. It wasn't nothing special, but it wasn't, too bad.
Not a lot of fighting games had create a fighter at that time too.
Yep. And in Armageddon, they did an amazing job, especially with the whole getting your timing down. They added just a ridiculous amount of these moves will counteract with this to make it a combo, where if you have this, but you add it with something else, it doesn't do anything. And makes it so, instead of having that like 7-hit combo, it'd be the 2 hits, and because of their body positioning, it wouldn't keep on going on, and there would be that delay. They did a lot of emphasis in that, and like I made this character, then Armageddon, I think I won at least like 300-400 matches, and I only lost like 20. Because he was
that online, or?
Yep.
Wow.
It was just because like he was just so ridiculously amazing. Like everything went solid, and I had like throughout this playing this, and that's here's one of the things too that playing through the single player, you gain special moves for. I can't remember. You gain special moves, and then also in Deception you gained them through Sajinko, I think was his name. But you gained special moves also in this one. But this one you were able to use it in your special character instead of Sajinko having them or whatever his name was. Because like, he unlocked them as like special character abilities from Scorpion and Sub-Zero. But in this one you had a lot more, and you were able to use that in your character. And like if you played all through it, you had all these awesome special abilities. And basically online, like making your character awesome in his regular fighting style, and then also on that was just like, okay, you're pretty much impossible to beat if you know what you're doing.
Well, I remember creating a very awesome looking Hulk Hogan, and you can even name their fighting style.
Oh, yeah.
And I named his fighting style Hulkamania. I made all the special moves like big boot power attacks, kind of like that. Anything that involved anything resembling close to a big boot or a leg drop.
Oh yeah.
Hulkamania running wild in Mortal Kombat, brother. I had a lot of fun with Create a Fighter in Mortal Kombat Armageddon, and I wanted to say like the creating and like the clothing and like the editing features were as extensive as like say other like the wrestling games, like, I think felt really nailed them. But for fighting games at that time, any other games, it completely outclassed any other game that tried it before.
Also, though, part of that was when you played single player, you unlocked like a lot of clothing.
Yeah.
And I think you can unlock some of the clothing in the crypt, if I'm right. And it was one of those things, standard, it wasn't bad, and like the standard moves and all that stuff, as I talked about. But as you played the single player, you unlocked a lot of that very neat stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's what added to the whole gameplay in the single player.
Yeah, you kept getting more coins and unlocking more characters and costumes as you played. Like I said, like the 20, 30 minutes or so I played yesterday, it seemed like every few minutes I was unlocking something or getting more coins to unlock more something. Just gave you more incentive to keep playing just 5 more minutes.
Yep.
And, that conquest mode, even if you didn't like the core fighting game that much, it was something cool and a whole nice 4 or 5 hours long or something like that?
No, it was longer than
that.
I think it was at least a good 10.
10 hours? Wow. I got a long ways to go still.
Yeah,
I was like,
pretty in-depth.
When I first got it, I really played it for a couple hours there. I'm like, I can't wait to get back into this. And then my 360 came back from repair. I never got back to it. But, just a great roster of characters. And it was even cool, too. They let you play as every single boss, too. Garo, Kintaro, Motaro, fucking Fujimontaro. No, I don't even know who that is. Yeah. Kind of like a great way for the series to go out in a bang that generation. Oh, and I guess it's worth noting they ditched combat chess and puzzle combat for motor combat, which was the Mortal Kombat kart racer, and you weren't really a big fan of it.
No, it was okay. Me and Jake played a lot when we first had the game because we bought it and we bought it together and we played a lot of that. It was fun, but that's the thing is that like, okay, it's a rip-off Mario Kart, obviously, and it's fun and it's a good game, but
it's not. It's no Mario Kart.
No, it doesn't matter if you're good, because basically if somebody like hits you off to the side or like you already get squished by one of the things, like by playing it, because there's like death trap type things here and there, but like you spawn like very close to who is in front of you anyways, where it's not like it spawns you back some behind that, so you need to make sure you don't go that way. It just basically takes out a lot of the skill parts of, like, even though Mario Kart's not very skill-based, you still have to learn from your mistakes.
I think you're looking a little too much into it, Joe.
No, and that just totally ruined it.
It's just like a side game, kart racer.
Totally awesome, though.
There's a little kart racer on the side. It's not
they all have their cool little mobiles.
The conquest is cool, but I thought just for something fun, I went back and played a few rounds of motor combat, and fun little diversion. Put it on Xbox Live Arcade now. I think that wraps up that generation of Mortal Kombat talk, and a few more handheld ports. I know at least a few on Game Boy Advance, and on DS there's a couple Mortal Kombat games, which I think used both. There are some that used the Mortal Kombat 3 engine, the 2D one, and then the Deadly Alliance engine, the new one they had. And there's another one on the PSP, Mortal Kombat Unchained. And then, of course, the downloadable ones for Ultimate MK3 on 360, which was awesome. Added online play. Mortal Kombat 2 on PS3 as the downloadable PlayStation Network title. Added online play. Pretty awesome. Awesome arcade ports. The Mortal Kombat Live was still alive during that time, and it debuted in the new generation or the current generation, I guess, on 360 and PS3 with Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. Now, what were you like, Joe, when you heard that these two universes would be crossing over? It seemed kind of weird.
After Armageddon, I was so psyched because I was like, oh my god, they actually made the smart decision. They didn't cap the characters at like 12, 16 or so. I'm like, they have a ridiculous amount of characters in Armageddon. I'm like, they're going to have a ridiculous amount of characters here. They already got all the costumes for all the new gen stuff. They already got all the, like, in general move layouts, even though they're probably going to switch it up because that's kind of what they do. But it's like, they had this awesome game. Then they just screwed it up.
Not digging the MK versus DC?
No, it was okay. It wasn't bad. But I was just extraordinarily disappointed in it.
Well,
because of the characters.
Yeah, it wasn't like a 30 or 40 person roster, which I kind of thought that would be going in, thinking like, okay, they got to have at least like 16 or 20 guys from each universe, but it was a 20 character 20 characters, but then they had one more unlockable for each side, and so 22 altogether. But and since they were using the DC universe, DC obviously they don't want to see their characters getting super gored up with a traditional MK style gore and fatalities, so it got toned down a bit. Only first ever Mortal Kombat game with a T rating. I don't know, how would you like that, Joe? They still had blood in the game, but it was nowhere near what you were used to.
I almost thought
and fatalities.
I almost thought they did that just to get the whole younger crowd in there. But I don't know, it's just it kind of just, I had high expectations for it, and I was very, very, very psyched for it. I thought maybe they'd even throw a tag type thing in there, but I mean, and that's one thing that just takes me off about Mortal Kombat, is they always come out with these new features, new this, new that, and then they take it away in their next game. Like the whole, puzzle combat and chess and stuff. I mean, they could have added that to the new ones, or made it like an unlockable feature.
I know some of the handheld games kind of had them as a bonus feature.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, I mean, they just kind of, like, I like Mortal Kombat, but they always seem to, like, half-ass things.
Well,
if that sounds right, kind of.
I could kind of see where you're coming from, but on the flip side, I know a lot of game series, when it's time for a new generation of consoles, they kind of want to start from scratch. They don't want to reuse everything all over again. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they're thinking, well, we can do combat chess and puzzle combat, but let's focus more on getting these costumes and everything else looking really good, and it's about reestablishing the engine to run on the new generation. So usually, like the first game in a series, you won't see that much additional content. Like Deadly Alliance was mostly just, the conquest mode was just mostly just a training mode, and you just had like your standard arcade mode. And then later with Deception and Armageddon, you saw more and more characters and more bonus modes like the puzzle combat and the combat chess. I think for whatever the next MK game will be on 360, you'll see more and more of these modes and more characters and more everything. I guess the toned down, going back to the toned down gore and fatalities, they were still there, but since it was a T rating, they kind of had to clean them up a little bit, tone them down a little bit. It didn't bother me that much. I was like, oh, they're still gory, and even more noteworthy was that kind of like in boxing games, like you notice like your fighter, they get more beat up throughout the fight. Their clothes would start to rip, your fighters would get a little more bruised up, look a little more roughed up. I thought that was pretty sweet looking. Now, they did introduce a couple new fighting mechanics. They did do some new stuff in here, like the free fall combat and the close combat. Grab an opponent, bring it up to you close, but like the free fall combat, that was new. Like, we brought up several times already how you can multi-tier stages, jump through a wall and go down to a different part of a stage. But now, while you're in the process of going to a new stage, you can get engaged in this crazy free fall combat where you're the self-explanatory, falling through the air, mashing buttons. It's kind of like you can see what buttons each other is pressing, and you can kind of counter and flip the other person around. So it's very risk and reward. And I thought it was like an interesting dynamic. It doesn't happen that much where it gets in the way, but every now and then it's like, oh, okay, here we go. I don't know. Did you think that just seemed too gimmicky, Joey, or did you care for it too much, or no?
I think they made it too easy to reverse, but it was okay.
I know you're kind of, like you said, disappointed with the slimmed down character roster, but how did you like controlling the new batch of DC characters?
It was okay. The Joker was a lot of fun, but people like the Superman, that's the... I don't know, Mortal Kombat, everyone has always been to the fact they're mortal, and they can die. So you don't really have any of the whole, this guy's more powerful than that guy, but they have their own abilities and strengths and weaknesses. And then you had a DC where, Batman's just like a badass. He's like the average Joe, except he's rich, and he has all these special cool things. You got Superman, the Man of Steel, and then, like Catwoman, nothing, so, same with Batman type thing there. And then you got Wonder Woman, you got all these other, You
got like all
these other guys.
It's not like the biggest DC heroes.
Yeah, but it's like when Superman can get his butt kicked, I mean, by like, it's just kind of like ruins it a little bit for me. But
yeah, well, they kind of come up with like a formula to say why Superman he's not so invincible or whatever. They state his weaknesses. Well, not only is he vulnerable to kryptonite, but he's also vulnerable to magic.
Yeah, but you know what? Why didn't everybody just, like, when you verse him, everybody just wears a kryptonite necklace? That would solve that problem.
Yeah.
I think it would be very funny, too. Pick some people, it's like, here's your kryptonite necklace.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was no conquest mode, but, like, there was a story mode, which is, I mean, you have your standard arcade ladder, just several straight fights and a boss or whatever, but you also have, the story mode, which I guess is, in a weird way, the conquest mode, just minus all the 3D platforming. And I was playing through a little bit of this, actually, earlier today, where, you pretty much, there's two sides of it, the MK side and the DC side. Each side has, like, I think 6 or 7 chapters, and each chapter is, like, 3 or 4 fights with a different character. And it's just pretty, like, you do a fight, and then you get a brief cutscene connecting each fight together, so there's little bits of story narration between each and every fight. And the story is freaking bonkers. It's like, some way, somehow, they come up with this crazy way for how the DC and the Mortal Kombat universes cross over, you know, insert stereotypical, you know, time portal gone wrong, the cross story device that links these two universes together, and there you go. And yeah, it's kind of interesting seeing, like, both the DC characters and the Mortal Kombat characters, like, interact with each other. And for some parts you're thinking, well, why would Superman just all of a sudden attack these guys without any, or Captain Marvel attack these guys, or, you know, your traditional good guy Mortal Kombat characters like Liu Kang and Sonya attack, you know, all these other characters against their own will. And they kind of introduce this rage aspect where all these, you know, supposedly good guys, their eyes turn yellow and it makes them evil or whatever. There's this virus running around. I don't know, it's ridiculous. You kind of got to see it just to watch it, to experience it, but utterly ridiculous story aside, it's pretty entertaining to watch, just like a horrible Uwe Boll movie. Well, it's not that bad, but that's only from, like, playing a third of the MK story, so a little too early to judge. I just had to get that in there. The story mode, I can't wait to see what I plan on playing the rest of the MK story and the DC story this weekend here. I wanna see what they have to offer. But you know, there's also a combo challenge mode. I don't know if you ever spent a lot of time in that, Joe. You said you like learning all the combo strings for all the characters in previous conquest modes.
Yeah,
that's what combo
fun.
challenge mode is about. I mean, I tried spending a little time on that, and some of those combos, it says right in the button sequence input, this symbol means you need a pro timing. And it means pro timing because you literally have, like, what seems like a split millisecond to enter a button sequence, because there are some combo strings which I think I only pulled off once out of what seemed like 100 tries, literally. You know, surprisingly, the game is actually a hit at parties. I remember when I went to a buddy's Super Bowl party earlier this year, before the game. We were playing just a lot of games before the Super Bowl, and I brought over MK versus DC, thinking, okay, hey, here we go, get something quick to play. Everyone can take turns in, and it was a hit with my buddies. We all got into it a lot, and
I don't know, it can be a very fun game, but it's just not one of those games I really want to play by myself.
Yeah, sure, yeah. MK versus DC, I kind of appreciate Midway doing something different as a whole, just trying something different instead of sticking with the same formula. You know, because I had a feeling, too, you know, the next MK game is going to be like your stand, and Ed Boon, the series co-creator, already stated that the next Mortal Kombat game is going back to its roots, M-rated, gory to the core, lots of awesome fatalities, so I knew that they'd probably go back to going back to what worked with the next game, but, you know, hey, I'll give props to Midway for trying something new, and, you know, mixing it up for fighting games, so, yeah, so Mortal Kombat 9, currently in the works, not going to be put out by Midway. First MK game, not published by Midway, because Midway got went bankrupt, and a lot of the remaining studios got bought out by Warner Brothers Interactive, so they will be publishing the next Mortal Kombat game. So
That still sounds weird.
right now it's just tentatively titled Mortal Kombat 9 because it will be the 9th core fighting game in the MK series. So make of that what you will, and hopefully it'll be returned to form.
Hopefully. Maybe just rip off Armageddon, I'll be happy.
So let's close off this Mortal Kombat retrospective, Joe. What do you think is Mortal Kombat's legacy for fighting games?
Armageddon. Simple.
No. That's my next joke.
Okay, delete that.
I was going to say, what's your favorite Mortal Kombat game? Later.
Okay, sorry. Okay, re-ask the question, because Armageddon was in my head, and that was my first response.
I'm not going to delete that.
Alright.
What's pretty much...
Armageddon.
What's your overall thought of the Mortal Kombat franchise? What's its legacy you think it's left to fighting games as a whole? Like, if other games... Do you understand what I'm saying?
I kinda do, but why don't you tell me first, and then I'll tell you. Because, like, I kinda get what you're saying, but...
It's not that hard of a question, Joe.
No, well...
I'll tell you...
See, here's the thing,
I'll tell you my view.
To me, their legacy is... I don't know, when I think of Mortal Kombat, I still think of, like, the let's half-ass this crap. But their legacy, to me, of the late years... Because I think after, Mortal Kombat 4, or pretty much all Mortal Kombats up to Deadly Alliance were the whole, what we explained. And then, I don't know, I think they kind of have two legacies, to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then it's pretty much like the button masher, everyone have fun type thing, but, there's a little bit of skill. And then, to me, which I found more attractive, was Deadly Alliance through Armageddon, which was the serious, like, imagine if you were really controlling this guy in real life, and like if, you actually know what can counter what. That's kind of like the whole legacy it gave to me of the, if you really know what you're doing, you can really pull stuff. You can pull that whole, you have 10 life left and he has full, and you're going to make a big comeback. Or handicaps, you're going to have that ridiculously low handicap. He's going to have 100% life. You're going to pull, because you're that good. That's its legacy to me, kind of.
Okay, well, for me, I think Mortal Kombat just kind of ushered in that wave for a lot of crappy, inferior clones of it. Like, let's say, like you said, Joe, the first half of MK games, like the 2D ones, it was all about, the blood, gore, fatalities, and like you said, a little bit of skill with some of the limited core combat things that it offered up to the plate. And it paved the way for a series of shitty clones like Pit Fighter and a lot of other games that tried just to be more flash over substance with gore and stuff. Even though that was one of the MK series trademarks, the game was just a lot of fun to play, just to try out all these new moves and fatalities and what have you. So that was like you said, the first half. I kind of right there with you. But when the series did its rebirth from Deadly Alliance on, and I didn't even include MK versus DC with it too, really fleshed out the core combat with all the fighting styles, and also added a lot of awesome, cool game modes. Really pioneered online gameplay for fighting games. Brought one of the few games that took a risk with online fighting and creative fighter modes, and really redefined itself. That we still have all these awesome fatalities and all the flash you remember MK to have, but now we have a lot more substance too. And they didn't try and just clone Virtua Fighter and Street Fighter with just trying to make all these incredibly tactical fighting games. It kind of has its own strategic fighting, like you say strategic. It has its own variety, its own form of fighting to bring to the table, and it's fun, and I like it, and that's why I probably prefer Mortal Kombat over your average Street Fighter, Virtua Fighter, Tekken. Those games are all fun in their own right too. I love playing with friends, but I prefer Mortal Kombat.
But you don't like playing with me.
I mean, I had a blast playing with you yesterday.
Okay, what about when we're playing Deception or Deadly Alliance or Armageddon?
We played a shit.
And like it would be like Joe 11 wins in a row, Dale 1. You'd be
I'd
like,
still play.
"Fuck
I would still play.
Nuh-uh." After a while, you'd be like, all right.
I rocked a Mean Jax and Johnny Cage in Deadly Alliance.
Yep.
No, as far as favorite Mortal Kombat, you know, Joe, I think I'm going to kind of have a special place in my heart for Mortal Kombat 2 on the Super, but I think I'm going to have to go with Deadly Alliance, especially too, because we played the hell out of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't really put in as many hours of Armageddon yet, but I think if I was to put in as many hours of Armageddon as I would Deadly Alliance, I'd probably say Armageddon, just because a whole lot more of the conquest mode and everything, so, just like we said, so, Armageddon.
Yep. And the character selection, it just gives the whole, if you got a ton of friends over, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, hey, if you guys, I kind of put a shout out on VG Evo. I made a thread for, only just a couple days, though, notice, so we didn't get anything for people writing in about any Mortal Kombat memories they may have had. So if you have any you want to share, or just say some of your favorite Mortal Kombat games, or your take on the franchise, if it is your cup of tea or not. Hopefully, at least you learned a little something about the franchise. So send us your emails, mailbag@ontappodcast.com. We want to hear what you have to say. So quickly, we've been running quite long here. Joey, let's close things off with what you've been playing lately. So, still rocking a lot of the Meg beta?
Actually, since Call of Duty has came out, Meg has not been played on my PS3 or SOCOM. But SOCOM,
They got a big patch coming out.
Yep, that I'm really looking forward to. But that SOCOM and Call of Duty and Left 4 Dead, those have been...
Left 4 Dead 2?
Yep, Left 4 Dead 2. And that's kind of... 4 is a 3. And that 1 versus 100 is a lot of fun also.
They got the new season going.
Yeah.
New achievements.
Who cares about achievements?
None of us really talked about Left 4 Dead here on Tap before. Just real quick, is the sequel better than the original? I played the original off and on, but not the new one.
They both got their perks. I mean, the environments are completely different. So, in a way, I will actually say there's not a better... There's a couple of neat attachments that they add in Left 4 Dead 2, but, I mean... They're both their own great games in their own ways. I mean, like, when you gotta run through the hospital, and there's, like, it's just, like, priceless, like, running through there and killing zombie patients, and, just, like, some of the stuff in there is just so priceless. And then here, you go through a construction site in the new one, and it's just priceless things in both games, but I won't really say one's better than the other, because this is actually one of the few games that you can't really compare them. Because it's a story, but it's not. But, it's actually one of those zombie games that are like, that's awesome. I can play that, and I can play it, and I can play it. And then when you get so good, you play the hardest mode, and you still suck.
Yeah, I heard Left 4 Dead 2 has a pretty big bump in difficulty.
Well, even the first one was like that too, but now they added the realism, which makes it harder for the whole teamwork. But more or less, I mean, it's when you get to the hardest difficulty, if you and your friends don't move slow and stick together, you are screwed. Mm-hmm. But you can't move too slow, because then the horde starts spawning faster, and it's just, you run out of ammo, and you have other problems. But basically you have to move at a steady pace and not get separated. And also, hopefully we'll do that video review on Left 4 Dead 2. I don't know, we got some...
That's been the back burner for a while.
Yeah.
Been wanting to do a video review.
Yeah, just haven't had much time on all areas, and have to have enough people to do it, because we got couple little neat ideas depending on the game, but a couple neat ideas for Left 4 Dead, and yeah, unfortunately they take a lot more work than this.
Yeah. Alright, real quick for what I've been playing, a lot more Williams Pinball. Yeah, gosh. Starting to really rack up the achievements in that, so really almost got all my wizard goals for one table now. Each table is a set of basic goals and a set of more advanced wizard goals. So almost got only need one more wizard goal for the Gorgar table. Huzzah. Also really getting into Infamous on PS3, about 4 or 5 hours into that, and just really digging that open world game with kind of superhero style, Crackdown inspired power-ups and stuff. So, and just the way you climb up buildings and learn more powers, it's really cool. Hope to get a lot more time into that here pretty soon. I beat Wet on PS3. I rented that. That game is not good. It's like a poor man's Stranglehold. Stranglehold I really liked. You know, it's a 3D action game where you just shoot the shit out of everything and have all these crazy slow motion bullet time style effects to the graphics and control gameplay. Wet, whenever you shoot, pretty much almost whenever you jump or do a dive or do these sliding run up against walls, you go into slow motion bullet time, and it's cool and all. And I was actually having a fairly decent time with the game, like the first 6 levels, but halfway through the game goes in this weird platformy type stage where it's kind of like more Uncharted, where it's just jumping, getting from point A to B with a few kills sprinkled in, a few fighting sequences sprinkled in here and there. But the way the core controls work for Wet, that style of play is not conducive to more platforming style gameplay, which caused it to be a mess and a lot of mistimed jumps and just ruined the game for me. The rest of the game was alright, but just, yeah, like I said, poor man's Stranglehold. Not super fun altogether. Pass on that game. It's definitely not worth it. We tried out a little Zombie Apocalypse yesterday on PS3, kind of like Smash TV meets
kind of fun
with like a little zombie theme. That wasn't too bad. Played some Madden NFL 10 against Scott a few days ago. He whipped my ass. Rock Band 2, Phoenix Wright and Justice for All for the DS. Started up Assassin's Creed on the 360 because all this hype for Assassin's Creed 2 has kind of got me the itch to give the series a try here. So I got a few hours into the first Assassin's Creed, kind of liking what I'm seeing so far. So maybe I'll hop on the Assassin's Creed bandwagon. And then, you know, like we said, yesterday played a lot of the Mortal Kombat games. 2, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, Armageddon, and MK vs. DC we all rocked yesterday. So it was cool revisiting all those games in preparation for the show. So yeah, that's everything I've been playing. And that wraps up this show. So like I said, please email us if you have a thought about anything we discussed on Mortal Kombat on the show. Love to hear what you'd have to think. Mailbag at ontappodcast.com. And ontappodcast.com, you can go there. We got links to all our iTunes and Zune feeds. Kind of having a problem with our iTunes feed at the moment. If you're subscribed, it won't pull the new shows for some reason. You gotta manually type in our RSS feed in iTunes, and that will subscribe. And you can find the link to that off our main page there, so make sure to go there to check that out. And make sure to visit our forums, which can be found on VGEvo.com under the podcast network. We got our channel there with the many other awesome podcasts on VGEvo. So I think that does it, Joe. Thanks for coming on here, man.
Yep.
I know you're a big MK fan, and definitely dug your... It was awesome to have your expertise to share with the world.
Sure.
All right, we're done. We're out of here. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
Yay.